Hey everyone, Ripley Sellers with Bob's Watches. I'm here in the studio with Justin for another episode of Vintage of the Week, where we pull aside one remarkable vintage watch and share with you just why we love it.
All right, Ripley, we got a really nice Daytona here today we're going to talk about. But real quick before we get into it, let's do the wrist check. What are you wearing?
I'm wearing my Speedmaster.
I love it.
357250. Has slide in the front, sapphire in the back,
Very
and
nice.
It's on.
It's an interesting strap.
Yeah, kind of a rug.
Yeah,
motif type
kind
of
of.
thing,
Yeah, very kind of felt texture on it. It's different. I like seeing something different.
Yeah, class it up a bit and putting on a jacket. You know. Well, what about you? What do you have on today?
I'm going with Daytona. I mean, we're talking about vintage Daytonas, so I figured it was appropriate. But yeah, love the white dial, love the steel bezel. It's a great watch, right? Super classic.
A configuration I wish they still made. I love steel Daytonas with steel bezels. Love the new ceramic one, but sad to see the old steel one gone.
Yeah.
And speaking of steel bezels, jumping right into the watch we have today.
Yes. This is a very nice piece, right?
Yeah, so 6265, just like the 6263, this is the final evolution of that first generation of manually wound Daytona watches. It was produced from the early 70s right up until they switched to automatic movements, zenith movement, sapphire crystal, all that in the 88. So this is kind of the final expression of the original Daytona. And although it was offered alongside the 6263 with the black acrylic bezel, I'd argue that this is closer to being the original vision of the watch, because when the Daytona was first introduced, it had a bezel that was far more like this rather than that black acrylic number. I mean, really lovely watch, and I think because the 6263 gets all the hype, the 6265 is often overlooked, but I really love it.
It's nice, and you're right, it is often overlooked. I love the kind of all steel on this one. Like you said, it's very steel. It's got the silver dial, the steel bezel, steel Jubilee bracelet, and I love that. I think it's really unique looking, and it's just a great example of a really classic Daytona.
Yeah, for the 6263, I think I prefer a black dial, but when you get all this metal on the 6265, all those polished surfaces, brush surfaces there, I think I like the silver dial. It just makes it look a little bit more unique compared to other more contemporary Daytonas. So this particular example dates to 75. Okay. So we're kind of right smack in the middle of the production run for it. But it's a Sigma dial we got here.
Yeah, which is kind of what right? Do you want to let them know what a Sigma dial if people aren't aware?
I mean, during the 1970s, we've got the quartz watches and competition moving in like affordable Asian-made timepieces, and so there was this kind of push in Switzerland around the time to sort of promote like the high quality and premium materials being used in their timepieces. And so if you look at the 6 o'clock location right here on either side of the Swiss T signature there, you got the two little Greek Sigma symbols, and what those indicate is that despite this being a stainless steel watch, all the hands and hour markers are made out of solid gold, like you'd have on a contemporary Rolex. So, that wasn't something that was standard at the time like it is today, and something that they were only doing during the 70s.
Yeah, they didn't do it for very long, right?
No, not at all. You won't find this on, a watch sold on the later half of this model's production. So if you were to get one in 87 or 88, you're not going to find unless the dial had been swapped out or something. This is really just something that was done in the 70s, and then consequently, if someone had their dial replaced thereafter, there's a pretty good chance they're not going to have one.
Right.
So it is a nice, rare little detail. And then keeping on with this, despite this being made in 75, this dial doesn't have the Daytona name.
Yeah, that's the first thing I notice about this. I noticed a couple things, and that's probably the first one where, it doesn't have that Daytona over the bottom subdial, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and this is cool because it's this watch came out about almost a decade after they started using the Daytona name associated with the watches in the mid-60s. So it's surprising that we don't have it on here, although it's not out of question at all, because you frequently see Daytona watches made throughout the 70s that don't have it, produced right alongside some
Others
that do.
Yeah, so some do, some don't. It's just...
Yeah, I've got a vintage catalog from 76 at my house, and if you open it up, you got a steel Daytona, a gold Daytona. One's got the Daytona name, the other doesn't. Personally, for this watch, clean steel bezel, it looks great and everything. I kind of like it without it.
I kind of like it without it too. Like you said, it's a little unique, right? And it's also really clean. I think with the kind of the all steel motif, and we have the black subdials. It's a very monochromatic watch, and I really like kind of that just uninterrupted dial and just clean feel.
Yeah, you lose the pop of color, but what you get something super clean. And if we're talking about just sort of where this falls within 6265 examples, you know, the 6265, because it went from the early 70s until the end of the 80s there, you can find them with a bunch of different characteristics. This one has its original pushers, which is always a nice thing to see.
I noticed that as well.
And that's because it was in 75. If this was made after in the 80s, you'd expect to see what are known as service pushers, even though that would have been original for it.
Sure.
But this is exactly as it should be for, you know, a mid-70s watch. You get your Sigma dial, you get your the previous style of pushers, and you also get this cool Rolex USA oval link Jubilee bracelet.
That's really nice too. For me, I mean, I love having the bracelet, even if I don't wear it on there. This watch just begs on a nice leather strap. I think this would look so amazing on, like, you know, a nice brown leather strap, and I would wear it like that every day. But the other thing that I really notice about this that stands out to me is the condition of that bezel. I think the bezel is really nice. I love that high polished, like you said, it adds to that steel metal, you know, total motif of the watch. But with a lot of these we see, you know, the bezels get scratched really easy and then they get polished and possibly over polished, right? I see so many of these where, you know, the marks around the bezel are illegible or completely gone or just about gone, right? This one's really good shape.
Yeah, 100%. For me, party piece of this watch, definitely the dial. Really, really clean. Love the warm patina on the luminous plots. Love that's a Sigma dial. Love everything about the dial. Great condition. But once you move outside the dial, that bezel, wow.
Yeah.
It's clearly been, you know, not mint and just fresh service replacement part, but like you were saying, so often, guy knocks it into a door frame, gets a dent, takes it to try to get it polished, and those subtly engraved numerals are just gone. This is not the case at all. This is
it's really sharp and really
super
clean.
crisp, really nice, really honest condition, and, you know, exactly the thing you want framing a dial of that quality as well.
Absolutely.
I know the 6263 is often the one people want from the vintage Daytona collection, but for me, I don't know. If I'm not getting a black 6263, this is a really strong contender. You still get the screw down pusher, screw down crown. You know, wear is just a little bit bigger than some of the earlier pump style pushers,
Right.
But it doesn't look quite like the immediate Daytona people are used to seeing, because people are, for the last, well, since, you know, for years people are used to seeing watches, Daytona watches in stainless steel with black bezels. This immediately just strikes you. It hits a bit different.
It does.
I think this one also comes with like an Oyster bracelet.
I believe it does have an Oyster bracelet with it.
Yeah, so although this is the original Jubilee that came on, I think when the owner, they had gotten a new bracelet for it. So you get an Oyster bracelet, best of both worlds, or throw it on a leather strap.
I was going to say, you got 3 ways to wear it now. You get the Jubilee, the Oyster, you could put it on probably any strap and it would look amazing. So yeah, very versatile watch too.
Yeah, really clean example, really beautiful watch. And if you already own maybe a modern Daytona or a 6263, something even with the Daytona name, this is something that's very much within that same wheelhouse. A very great like opposite side to the coin that expresses the vintage Daytona. Or how the model even started. Because if we look at the watch that you got on right now, that was the last steel Daytona to have a steel bezel.
Right.
After this, we get ceramic bezels like the one in production today. But if you look back to the very first Daytona, when they migrated that in 63, when they migrated the scale out to the bezel, it was a metal bezel. So that was kind of the brand's original vision for it. This is the final evolution of that original vision before we start getting into something that's more like on your wrist. And then eventually the 116-500 with a ceramic bezel. So kind of a little time capsule in a cool era in the Daytona. And something that I could easily see being your only Daytona or part of a Daytona collection, modern and vintage.
Exactly. I wouldn't feel bad about having several different Daytonas and this being, you know, included in there, where I feel like, you know, they're so similar that I could, you know, have something else in its place, and, you know, that money's all tied up in a lot of similar watches. No, I feel like it's really different. It has a really different look, and yeah, exactly. I could have several of them and, you know, be perfectly happy.
Yeah, and unlike the modern ones, you get those solid registers, so it already, rather than just having the rings, looks a little bit different, a little more utilitarian, a bit like the precious metal dials that they have right now. And as we always keep saying, this, if you like this one, head over to the site and buy it, because anything we're talking about on this series, it's going to be hitting the site.
This
when
one's
the video
for sale,
airs.
right? Yep, it'll be live on the site for purchase as soon as this video goes live. So yeah, if you're in the market for a vintage Daytona, definitely give this one a look.
Yeah, 6265, Sigma dial, beautiful condition, oval link, Rolex USA Jubilee bracelet. I mean, crisp bezel, original pushers. Yeah, that's a short list of good stuff on that one.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that about covers on this one. I really love this one. I think compared to the price you pay for a 6263, this 6265 offers a strong value proposition.
Yeah.
Although it's still an expensive piece. We're talking Grail Daytonas here.
Yes, these aren't starter watches, but it's an amazing piece.
No, but we're talking about a delta of tens of thousands versus some, a full kit 6263. So,
and like you said, if you're looking to get into the Daytonas, I mean, you could, easily spend six figures, multiples of six figures on depending on what you get. So this is a great, kind of entry into that if you're looking for, those vintage Daytonas, which, they're kind of king.
Oh, absolutely. About as blue chip as you can get when it comes to the investment side of Rolex.
Absolutely.
Well, that about covers it for this beautiful 6265 today. Sigma dial, absolutely stunning condition. Gorgeous. And I'd love to add it to my collection. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Vintage of the Week, where we'll show you what vintage watch we have for you then.
Take care.